Hi, Kevin here. I'm getting ready to make the famous French sandwich bread known as pain de mie. And I'm going to mix and knead the bread just as my French ancestors did, and that is entirely by hand. So the first thing you need is to adjust your camera. Here we go. So what I have here is a quarter cup of warm water. That's around 110 degrees. And then I'm going to add 2 1/4 teaspoons of active dry yeast. Now you could certainly use instant yeast. It really doesn't matter. Instant yeast and active dry behave in exactly the same manner. One is not faster than the other. And I'm just whisking in the yeast to dissolve it. And then I have 4 3/4 cups of bread flour. You could use all-purpose flour if you like. And what I'm going to do here is add 1 2/3 cup of warm whole milk. Then I'm going to add the yeast mixture. And where's my teaspoon? Going to add 2 1/2 teaspoons of kosher salt. 1, 2 1/2. Yeah, bread without salt is very boring bread. Okay, and then we're going to mix this up with a spatula. And we will be adding some butter later on. Pain de mie is made just with yeast, milk, flour, salt, and butter. Okay, stir that in, and it's going to be a stiff dough. It's also going to be a very sticky dough. It's a dough that requires quite a bit of resting periods. This bread is so delicious, it's absolutely worth your time. I'm just grabbing a knife so I can scrape off the spatula. And then drop the dough onto your work surface and do not add any flour. We will only add additional flour in an emergency, if there's an emergency. And then we're going to let this just sit here and rest for a couple of minutes so that the flour particles can absorb the moisture in the dough. Meanwhile, rinse out or wash out, dry, and lightly grease the mixing bowl. All right, the dough has been resting for a couple of minutes, and I have washed out, dried, and lightly greased the mixing bowl. So now we can start kneading the dough. And to do that, take your bench scraper and fold the dough over on itself. Like so. And then you can determine just how sticky this thing is, and it is pretty sticky. But again, we are not going to add any extra flour. So then, pick up the dough and just slam it down onto your work surface. Oh, a good 10 times. Here we go. Good, we're making a nice big mess. Okay, then I'm going to let this rest for another couple of minutes, so we'll be right back. All right, 2 minutes later, we're going to try kneading this again, and I do have some emergency or emotional support flour over here, but I hope not to use it. Yeah, each time you let the dough rest, the flour absorbs more of the liquid and it becomes a little less sticky. Let's see if we can do this. So we fold the dough over on itself and then push it out lightly at first with the heel of your hand. And if you have to use your bench scraper for a while, well, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, use the bench scraper to just lift the dough. You know what? I think I am going to break down and add not more than a teaspoon of flour here. Okay, and we'll see how that goes. See, if you add too much flour during kneading, the dough becomes too tough. And the bread ends up suffering in the end. Okay, so that little bit of flour made all the difference. Look at this. So now, we want to knead the dough until it becomes elastic and only a little bit sticky. And I'm going to knead it just for a little bit here, and then I'm going to let it rest again. And we did make this pan de mie a few years ago. I'll link the video, if I can find it, in the description box below. But I used the machine then. I used my stand mixer. And today, because I really feel I need the exercise, and also because I know that not all of you own a $300 stand mixer, I want you to know that you can make this fabulous French bread by hand. You just need to have a sense of adventure and a patient attitude. Okay, we're going to let this rest again. Oh, maybe 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, and then we'll be back. Okay, back to work. Let's see how this dough is doing now. Oh yeah, much less sticky. Knead it a few more times. Just fold the dough over on itself and then push out with the heel of your hand. Yeah, it's not even sticking to the board. And I did not flour the board, nor did I spray it, as I sometimes do, with vegetable spray. Look at that. Very nice dough. Okay, now it's time to knead some butter into the dough, and that's 6 tablespoons of frozen butter. And what I'm going to do, first I'm going to pat the dough out, and then I'm going to use a cheese grater to grate little pieces of butter onto the dough. I think shredding the cheese or grating grating the butter this way will make it much easier to knead it into the dough. You just want to do this a little bit at a time. Again, patience is your friend. Yeah, this cheese grater is working well here. Although if you don't have cheese grater, you could use the small holes on a box grater. Okay, and then we want to knead that in. And the reason we're adding the butter this way is because we don't want the dough to become oily. In other words, if you used softened butter here, the dough could become very greasy and then really difficult to work with. Knead that in. Yeah, the butter really gives this bread a beautiful richness. Okay, we're there. Feel free to fast forward if you like. It's going to take a minute. Actually, probably I'll turn the camera off and just finish adding the butter. I don't want this video to be overly long, as all of my other videos are. Okay, we're almost finished adding the butter. This dough looks wonderful. And just wait until you taste the finished bread. Pain de mie has a glorious texture. It's, well, pain means bread. It's the French word for bread. And mie refers to the interior or the crumb of the bread. And it has a very tight, firm crumb, but it's still a moist bread. And it's a bread that holds its shape for sandwiches. And since this is Thanksgiving week, and since I'm preparing a turkey, I'm anticipating lots and lots of turkey and cranberry sandwiches. And boy, will it be nice to have a decent bread for those sandwiches. Okay, last little bit here. Just want to be careful that you don't scrape your fingers against these little holes. Okay, and then I have a few little largish pieces. Those should knead in very easily. Yep. Now you can, of course, make this bread in a stand mixer. But this is a lot more fun. It's great exercise. All right. Our dough is ready. Now here's my bowl. Going to form it into a ball. Well, you can't even see. There. Form it into a ball. Put the ball in the bowl, flip it to grease the underside, and then cover it with plastic wrap, aka cling film. Now, this dough is going to get 3 rises. And for the first rise, you want the dough to almost triple in volume. That's going to take about 2 hours, so we'll come back. All right, we are tripled in volume here. So this next step is very easy. Move you in. Off with the plastic, and then deflate the dough. Just put your hand in. And then drop it onto the work surface. And roll up your sleeves. Pat out the dough. And then fold it in thirds as if you were folding a business letter. This, and then pat it out again and fold it in thirds the other way. And then return the dough to the bowl, which is sliding away from me. Cover it again with plastic. And let the dough rest until it has doubled in volume. That will take about 90 minutes. See you then. Okay, while the dough is completing its second rise, I wanted to talk with you about the kind of pan to use for pain de mie. Now you could bake the loaf in a standard 9x5 loaf pan. However, we have a lot of dough, so you can only fill the pan like 40% full. In other words, less than half full. And then use the remaining dough to make rolls. I think I have flour all over me. Okay, I'm going to bake my bread, all of the dough, in this old-fashioned pain de mie pan. And we've actually used this pan before, but let me explain it to you once again. So, yeah, today this bread pan is known as a Pullman pan, and it has this nifty lid, and the lid stops the dough from forming a crown as it bakes. And it measures 13 inches long, 4 inches wide, and 4 inches deep. It's just perfect for this bread. Okay, I'll come back when the dough has finished rising, and then we can form and bake the bread. Okay, second rise is complete, and I was on the telephone call, and this rose a little more than it should have. So I only wanted it to double in volume, but it tripled. So anyway, same as before, deflate the dough. By the way, all of these rises contribute to this French sandwich bread's magnificent taste and texture. Okay, and I am going to sprinkle just a little bit of flour on the work surface. Again, that's about a teaspoon. And then, before, pat it out, and then we're going to form this into the loaf. So, my loaf pan here. You want to pat this out to the same width as the pan, and that is, again, 13 inches. Okay, and then, as we've done before when forming loaves, you pull out two bat wings or Mickey Mouse ears, and then fold them in to create a triangle up here. So you have a point, pat this down, and then roll. And we're going to roll tightly, and then push to seal the seam. Push, roll, push, roll, push, push. Good. And then, when you get to the end, karate chop to seal the seam. Yeah! Okay, and how does this look? Looks pretty good. You want a lot of surface tension. In other words, you want to have a smooth top. And then, this goes into the bread pan. Pat it out, fix it so you can see. Get it into the corners. Okay, that looks good. I got one more corner to do. Even it out, and there we are. And then have to let this rise just up to within an inch from the top of the pan. And when we get there, I'll come back and we'll put the lid on and we'll bake this off. And halfway through the rising time, preheat the oven to 435 degrees Fahrenheit. I know that sounds like a weird temperature, but it is the correct temperature. 435 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, see you in a flash. All right, well, that only took about 30 minutes for the bread to rise to within an inch of the top. So now on goes the lid. Yeah, I really love this pan, and it's non-stick too. I'll put a link to the pan in the description box below, because if you want one, you can buy one on Amazon. Okay, and then I'll come back when the bread is done. Silly me, I forgot to tell you for how long to bake the bread. It's 35 to 40 minutes. And again, that's a 435 degree Fahrenheit oven. All right, here's the bread fresh out of the oven. Let's remove the lid. Looking good. Yep, I can hear the tap, so the bread is definitely done. And now, I want to knock it out of the pan onto a wire rack. Comes right out. Oh, it looks gorgeous. And then I'm going to set the rack on the pan so there's plenty of air circulation above and below. Flip this over on its side. Look at this, the crust is nice and brown, and again, perfect rectangle. So I'm going to let this cool, preferably to room temperature. Wish me luck on that. And then we can slice into it. Okay, the bread is not quite at room temperature, but honestly, I can't wait. I really want to have a taste. Ah, look at this. Gorgeous. I'll give you a close-up. So this is the me of pan de mie. It's the crumb, and it's a very tight crumb, but it's still moist. And now, oh, and I wanted to tell you, you can slice this bread very thinly, almost paper thin. You just have to make sure the bread has completely cooled. And now, I have some very good, very pricey extra virgin olive oil. It's a fruity olive oil. And I'm going to dip the bread in it and have a little taste. This bread is great for dipping in good olive oil. Oh, heavenly. Now if you hear a crunch, it's because I'm eating the end piece, the crust. Oh, so good. The bread has a yeasty, weedy taste that really can't be beat. Now, I wrote out a list of the different ways that I use pan de mie. I use it for dipping in fruity olive oil, obviously. For toast, French toast, fancy canapes, sandwiches, including fancy tea sandwiches, croutons, breadcrumbs, bread puddings, and probably lots of other things too that I can't think of at the moment. Anyway, I hope you will give this wonderful French sandwich loaf a try, and I will list the ingredients in the description box below, and again I will also put a link to the pan de mie pan, aka Pullman pan, in the description box below. And I hope you will try this bread. It is truly magnificent. And I hope you'll subscribe if you haven't already, and tap the little bell icon to receive notifications. And please post a comment below, because I really love hearing from you. And I'm going to be using this bread for lots and lots of turkey and cranberry sandwiches this week because it's Thanksgiving and it's only Mr. Fox and me, and I'm preparing a 15-pound turkey and the trimmings. Okay, have a happy Thanksgiving and thank you for watching. I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.